Okay, so we are live. Got another unboxing for you today from the Mcfarlane Toys Batman Classic TV series line, and this is Mr. Freeze. Doesn't have the name anywhere on the front of the package. So, this is, of course, Otto Preminger as Mr. Freeze. My personal favorite Mr. Freeze is George Sanders. Never made an action figure of him. In the Funko 3 3/4 inch line, which unfortunately did not last anywhere near as long as it should have. They did not have a George Sanders in that, although they did have an Otto Preminger and an Eli Wallach. So no Eli Wallach in this line so far, but we do have an Otto Preminger. So, and you can see that in the package, mine, the ring with the jets that spray out the coolant on his face, it's kind of warped. So I'm going to try to see if I can straighten it out. But yeah, that's what the back looks like. Pretty typical of the backs of these McFarlane figures all look pretty much the same, except for the picture of the character and the name of the character. So we've been over this before. I like this packaging design a lot better than the usual McFarlane packaging design. So we'll go ahead and open them up. And like with the other ones, this one's like glued on here really well. Like with the two Catwomen that I opened up yesterday. So I'm probably going to be doing these most of the rest of the week. If my other ones come in, I might do all through this week and maybe later. But I've still got Two-Face, and I've still got the animated New Adventures versions of Batman and Robin. There's Robin and Batman. So I'll have those to open up. And yeah, this freeze collar. It's kind of like a more rigid plastic than I would expect for being warped as it is. But I'm going to hit it with a hairdryer and see if we can get it back into shape. So there's one of his automatopoeias, and it says Clank, which this would have worked really well for a George Sanders Mr. Freeze because he had a helmet, so that could have been him getting hit in the helmet. But oh well. And then we got one that says Bonk. So this is one that my friend Rudy had sent me from out in California. And he said that these were pretty plentiful out here. I don't think I ever saw one out on my side of the country, unfortunately. But thankfully, he was able to get these for me. And I hadn't opened them up yet because, like I said at the time, I mentioned in my previous videos, the only one I had so far was this version of Adam West. But I've decided to go ahead and get caught up on this line finally. I knew I would eventually, and that was why I was like, yeah, go ahead and get me those Catwomen and that Mr. Freeze. So I'm about to do something that I very rarely do on this show, and I don't generally like to do it on the show, and that's that I'm going to use my hairdryer and try to soften this up. Now, we all know that Mr. Freeze cannot actually exist at a temperature below or above freezing. So if this was the real Mr. Freeze, it would be fatal to him. Thankfully, it's just a Mr. Freeze that's made out of plastic. So I'm hitting it with the hairdryer. And ideally, like, it would just start to get back into shape on its own. It doesn't seem to want to be doing that. And you can see I've hit this with the hairdryer for quite a long time. Usually 30 seconds is sufficient. And it looks like slowly but surely it's finally starting to warp back into place. I think the problem was I was just hitting it like on one side, and it was only really getting the heat on one side, and I needed to try to hit it a little more evenly. And it's still kind of warped, but we can maybe just kind of try to mold it back into shape with our fingers. And then it should look pretty good. I would like them to be presentable when I go to actually review the figure. I hate to take, points off because of some kind of, freak accident that happened in the packaging. And I believe that this tank is supposed to be glued down at his shoulders, but I think it might have come loose while I was hitting it with the hair dryer. So there we go. I think I have it back in shape. Now, one of the things I liked about I keep talking about George Sanders, but one of the things I liked about his version of Mr. Freeze is he actually had a proper helmet. And with Otto Preminger, he just kind of had this ring with these jets that were supposed to be spraying like nitrogen into his face. I didn't like that quite as well, but that's why his face was all frosty. And you can see he's got those bright red eyebrows like he had Wild. He said Wild all the time. So, everybody gives Arnold Schwarzenegger, some crap for all the ice puns that the character had when he played him in the movie. But, at least those were like ice related things to say. I'm not sure why Otto Preminger's Mr. Freeze kept saying Wild. Like it would make sense if he was like a Craven the Hunter kind of character, because the jungle wild. I get it, but Mr. Freeze, what does wild have to do with freezing? I don't know, but yeah, he looks a lot better now that I got his collar straightened out. So let's have a look at his articulation. So his head, of course, rotates from side to side. Can kind of tilt a little bit from one end to the other, but not a whole lot. He can look up about that far. He can look down about that far. So not really much to say as far as that goes. Man, the sculpting on the face is really good. Like it really looks like Otto Preminger, and it's got all kinds of detail to it. It's not coming across on this camera at all, but he's got all kinds of detail to like little wrinkles and pock marks and things like that in his face. Like they put a lot of effort into making this a good likeness of this guy. Man, I wish that he was coming across on the camera better though. He's got all these light colors on him, like this light blue and white and silver and all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of making him kind of washed out on the camera. I'm going to hit his wrist with the hair. I already did it with the hair dryer on the collar. I might as well hit the wrist too, because his wrist seems to be kind of stuck. See if we can get that loosened up a little bit. So you notice when I went through his accessories, one thing he was missing was his freezing gun, which of course is like the most important accessory that Mr. Freeze can come with, is a freezing gun, because he's Mr. Freeze. We have a Mr. Freeze that can't freeze things. So, that's unfortunate. But the costume's pretty accurate to what we have on the show. He's got this kind of like light blue jumpsuit. I want to say on the show it was a little bit more grayish in tone than this. At least that's what I remember it being, but it's still a good color. And you can see that like his gloves and his boots are like this matching, really shiny silver color. And that's really nice. It hits it off a little bit. So let's go back to the articulation again. So his arms rotate all the way around this way, and they move up about that far. So good range of motion on the arms. So, and then the elbows, it's a single jointed elbow that bends about that far, and it rotates all the way around. So pretty decent articulation, not quite up to the usual Mcfarlane standards, but still pretty good, I think, His legs go up about that far, so he actually has a better range of leg motion than Batman and Robin going forward, so that's kind of funny. And his leg only goes back about that far because unlike a lot of the other figures in this series, they actually sculpted the buttocks onto the torso rather than onto the legs. Oh, and he does have waist articulation, so you can pivot him at the waist. He rotates all the way around the waist. Knees bend up about that far. It is a single jointed knee, and it does rotate all the way around. There's no boot cut. There's no ankle articulation. That's it for articulation. These are pretty simple as far as the articulation goes. So this is a good figure. It's got a lot going for it. I would imagine anybody who's collecting this line would want to have Mr. Freeze in their collection. Now, I know some people might prefer George Sanders' Mr. Freeze, but I'm not going to complain about having an Otto Preminger, certainly. I would really like to have all three Mr. Freezes. But if I got to just settle for just having Otto Preminger for now, that's just how we're going to have to settle it. And just for the sake of comparison, here he is next to the Mcfarlane Toys Batman and Robin, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. So we can have a comparison of those two. And I can find one. They did one of them. I'm pretty sure he's over here. The comic book version of Mr. Freeze, which is, of course, a more modern version of the comic book than what this would have been based off of anyway. But he's still pretty cool. So Mr. Freeze has long been one of my favorite Batman villains. Anybody who's seen my watch along of Heart of Ice, I talked a lot about how much I like Mr. Freeze in that one. And of course, the Batman the Animated Series version of Mr. Freeze is probably the absolute best version of the character. But the one on the television series would have been the one I would have been first exposed to, and I've got a lot of affection for that particular version as well. So Mr. Freeze was on 3 separate 2-part episodes, and one was in the first season, and that was with George Sanders, and then there were 2 during the immense second season that they had, and Otto Preminger was Mr. Freeze on the second of those, in which he frames Batman and Robin for a crime they didn't commit. And one of the things that he robs a party that Bruce Wayne is hosting, and he makes everybody at the party get into this green pool, and then he freezes the pool so everybody's trapped in place. And Bruce and Dick are trapped in the pool while they have to watch Mr. Freeze has a fake Batman and Robin that very obviously throw the fight with Mr. Freeze and his goons, and then later on produces a doctored photograph of Mr. Freeze giving Batman a watch that belonged to Commissioner Gordon. It was just this whole crazy thing. Thankfully, at the end of it, Batman and Robin obviously were able to prove their innocence, and Gotham City goes back to trusting the dynamic duo once more. But all in all, it was a pretty entertaining episode. That was the one where the cliffhanger of it was Batman and Robin encased in these giant snow cones, which to my eyes looked like they just kind of used soap suds and kind of colored gels in the lighting to make it look as if they were different colors. But yeah, the thing that's the drawback of this Mr. Freeze, though, is he does not come with his freezing gun. So what I did was I went on to cults3d.com, and I found myself just kind of it doesn't look exactly like the gun that he had on the show, but it's close enough. Kind of a retro future blaster rifle that I believe it was made for Masters of the Universe figures. So I'm hoping it'll be about the right size as it is to put with this Mr. Freeze figure once I print it out. So, and when I do that, I'll put up some kind of community post or short or something showing off my new Mr. Freeze gun. So Mr. Freeze, really cool. Again, thanks to Rudy for finding this figure and the 2 Catwoman figures that I reviewed yesterday. So my Batman 66 action figure collection would not be complete without these figures. And they're all figures that, like, now anytime I try to find them on online, they're like up in like the $40, $50 range. And it would have been like very expensive for me to buy these if I hadn't found those, or if he hadn't found those for me at the time. And I'd sent him some stuff that I found over here that was, like, for whatever reason, easier to find over here than it was over there. Like, I think like there was a Superpowers Green Lantern that I'd sent him, which those like are all over the place, still all over the place over here. But yeah, I've got another package coming from Big Bad Toy Store, which is going to have a couple more 66 figures in there. And I managed to find an Egghead on eBay for a decent price, so I went ahead and ordered that. But that's pretty much it for Mr. Freeze. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure you like and subscribe, and all fun YouTube stuff down below. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Mr. Freeze in general and this figure specifically. And we will talk to you next time. Goodbye.